You never really get used to it. Seeing things on this job that shake you to your core. I've been a cop for over 20 years and have my fair share of chilling memories. But there's one case that haunts me to this day. It started out seeming routine, a missing persons call in a sleepy rural area just outside of town. Neighbors hadn't seen old Mrs. Jennings, the widow who lived alone down the road, in several days. They asked us to do a wellness check. My partner Frank and I drove out around dusk, joking about bothering this poor woman over nothing. When we pulled up to the small, ramshackle house, nothing seemed amiss, but knocking brought no answer. The door was unlocked, so we slowly entered, calling Mrs. Jennings' name. No reply came except the scurrying of rats down the hallway. Unease prickled my neck, and I drew my weapon just in case. Frank and I methodically cleared the few rooms of the decrepit old house. The peeling wallpaper and smell of must told a tale of nobody doing maintenance here in ages. Finally, we came to a closed door off the kitchen. Odd scraping sounds came from inside, heart pounding. I nodded to Frank, who carefully turned the knob. The stench hit me first, a powerful wave of decay and disease. As the door swung open, it revealed a den of true horror. There was no furniture, only mounds of trash rising to the ceiling. Rotting food, feces, and unidentifiable filth carpeted the floor. Every surface crawled with roaches and flies. The scraping sound came from an army of rats burrowing into piles, shredding newspaper and cardboard with abandon. But through the debris, I spied something even more chilling, a withered hand jutting out from under a tower of garbage. Reeling from the sights and smells, Frank and I slowly entered what could only be described as a death chamber. There was a path carved through the waste, and we followed it to the center. When the beam of my flashlight revealed the main pile, we saw her. Mrs. Jennings' lifeless body lay half-submerged in waste. Her paper-thin skin was coated with sores and maggots. Scraps of clothing hung from her skeletal frame. Shocked, I stumbled back into what appeared to be a homemade altar of bizarre animal bones and decaying food scraps. Clearly, the old woman had been dead for some time, and for reasons I still don't understand, she chose to live her final days wallowing in refuse as some type of demented recluse. Even now, the image of her corpse festering there amid those hellish conditions haunts my restless nights. What possessed someone to degrade themselves this way? It was almost too much for my psyche to bear. We evacuated the home and called in hazmat teams to begin the gruesome process of reclaiming the body. As we finished taking statements, I noticed my hands shaking slightly, a police veteran unnerved. Frank put his hand on my shoulder, trying to make sense of it all through tired eyes. All these years later, neither of us have come to terms with the horrors we witnessed in that house. When people ask me about my most unsettling case, my mind immediately goes back to that fateful call. While police work exposes you to the worst of the human condition, I'll never understand what twisted impulse made that lonely old woman choose to surround herself with such nightmarish decay in her final days. The ravenous vermin, the stench of rot, her withered corpse claimed by true squalor. That sinister house of foulness still lingers like a virus in my mind, popping up in disturbed dreams. I doubt the chilling memory will ever fade. It was my 5th year on the force when I caught the case that still shakes me to my core. As a rookie, I thought I'd seen it all. The violence, the depravity, the depths of human cruelty. But I was wrong, and I'll never be able to forget it. It started with a missing persons call one Tuesday morning. A woman, Samantha Clark, age 32, had failed to show up to work 2 days straight. Her employer said it was completely out of character. Samantha was their most reliable employee and hadn't missed a day in over 3 years with the company. Her coworkers were worried something terrible had happened. I assured them we would look into it and try to locate Samantha. My partner, a 15-year veteran on the force named Bill, and I headed over to Samantha's apartment to investigate. We knocked on the door. No answer. The property manager let us in. The apartment seemed tidy at first glance. nothing indicating a struggle or break-in. But no sign of Samantha either. We searched the place and found no clues until we opened the closet in the spare bedroom. And there she was, lying in a pool of blood and other bodily fluids, bound and gagged. She had been tortured viciously and was clearly dead, though the coroner later estimated only for 24 hours or so. We had just missed saving her. As we secured the scene, I had to excuse myself to vomit. Bill seemed shaken too. We'd both seen homicide scenes before, but this was savage on another level. Whoever had abducted and murdered Samantha was truly sinister and depraved. In the following weeks, the case consumed my every waking moment. Our forensics team combed every inch of Samantha's apartment, finding hair, skin cells, and even a fingerprint belonging to a Matthew Giles. When we ran Matthew's records, we found he had done time for assault, but had been out and off parole for 6 months. We brought Matthew in for intense questioning, hoping he would crack, but he refused to admit guilt, sticking firmly to his alibi that he had been out of state visiting family when Samantha was murdered. With no confession and not enough hard evidence, we had to cut Matthew loose. The captain warned me not to do anything rash, but I became obsessed. I knew in my gut Matthew had tortured and killed Samantha. I tailed him for weeks on my own time, until I discovered him preparing to skip town under an assumed name. Convinced I finally had him fleeing justice, I confronted Matthew at his hideout. At first he tried denying it, claiming he was just getting away for a while, but I refused to back down. Finally, he snapped. He confessed to killing her as if bragging, describing every horrific act of his with perverse joy. Then he attacked me. We struggled violently until I managed to get my gun on him. I still vividly remember staring down at Matthew's psychotic grin as I aimed at his chest. He seemed disappointed when I lowered my weapon and arrested him instead of shooting him dead. Bringing him to justice the right way was more important, I reminded myself. Still, part of me wishes I had killed him and saved the families from the painful trial. In my dreams, sometimes I did. Samantha's case has stuck with me after all these years. It reminds me that true evil walks among us, hiding behind seemingly normal faces. And try as we may, we can't always stop them in time. I became a cop wanting to help victims and punish the wicked. And yet now I often wonder, have we done enough? Were we done enough? Will we ever? Those doubts may never stop haunting me. It was a Tuesday night when the call came in. A suspected break-in on Victor Street, the third one this month. My partner and I headed out, not thinking much about it at first. We'd responded to so many calls just like it, but there was something different about this one. Something that still keeps me awake, some nights all these years later. As we pulled up to the small Blue Bungalow, nothing seemed amiss at first glance. The neighborhood was quiet, with residents tucked away in their homes for the night. But the front door swung wide open, the first sign of trouble. My hackles were up instantly. I told my partner to be on high alert. Guns drawn, we approached slowly. Clearing each room, we found nothing disturbed. No signs of ransacking or theft. The house laid out neatly, almost too neatly, aside from that open door, like something just strolled right in without a care in the world. An icy chill ran down my spine despite the heat of the summer night. Where were the homeowners? Heading toward the closed door at the end of the hall, my breath echoed loudly in my ears. I reached out, turned the knob, swung it open in one swift movement with my gun raised. Nothing. No one there. Only an immaculately made bed, as if no one had slept there in ages. Until we heard it, that low wail seeping through the walls. A cry from somewhere deep in the bowels of this ordinary little suburban home. We swept through the house again, looking for doors, hidden entrances, any sign of where that haunting sound originated from, coming up empty. Then I saw it. A seam in the living room wallpaper barely noticeable unless you knew where to look. I tore it open to reveal a door. The cry ceased instantly, as if it knew it had been found out. We scrambled to open the door, guns aimed ahead, demanding whoever was on the other side show themselves. Silence. Clicking on our flashlights, all we saw was a narrow staircase leading down into inky darkness. We had no choice but to descend into that abyss, our calls of police echoing into the shadows. The wooden steps creaked under our weight. The stench overwhelmed me first. That unmistakable smell of decay and death. I gagged but kept steady forward. At the bottom of the stairs, our flashlights revealed a small room. Makeshift was the only word for it, with a dirt floor and crude wooden shelves along the walls. And the far wall, that's when I saw her, or what remained of her, chained at the wrists and ankles against the wall. Her body ravaged, naked except for those chains binding her. My hands trembled, flashlight beam wavering up and down her destroyed form. We got her down quickly, but it was too late. No life left in her glassy eyes. Rigor had set in some time ago. She'd clearly been there for at least a day or two, kept alive only by some sadistic whim of whoever did this to her. I scrambled back up the stairs, gagging and steadying myself against the wall as I radioed it in. Backup arrived along with crime scene analysts who would determine she was a college girl reported missing 5 days prior. We never caught the monster who committed this atrocity. He must have known we were coming and disappeared before we ever arrived. I scoured every inch of that house looking for who knows what. A hair, an article of clothing, a weapon even. Some shred of evidence that would lead us to a murderer. But the house had seemingly cleaned and sanitized itself by the time we uncovered that evil chamber below. I still drive by that house sometimes late at night when I can't sleep, hoping to see a light at night when I can't sleep, hoping to see a light on. Someone wandering by a window, wondering if that hidden room still remains undiscovered and what other secrets lurk there. We go about our lives never knowing what's happening right next door, oblivious to unimaginable horrors playing out while we eat our dinners and sleep soundly down the block. It's enough to make your mind play tricks, seeing monsters around every corner. I never thought it would happen to me. I always felt safe in my apartment, even when I was alone at night. I had a good security system, a friendly neighbor, and a loyal dog, but none of that mattered when he came for me. It started with a phone call. I was watching a movie on Netflix, cuddled up with my dog on the couch when my phone rang. It was an unknown number, but I answered anyway. Maybe it was someone from work, or a friend who changed their number. "Hello," I said. There was no answer, just heavy breathing. I frowned and repeated myself. "Hello, who is this?" The breathing stopped, and a voice whispered in my ear. "I'm watching you." I felt a chill run down my spine. I looked around, but I didn't see anyone. I was on the 3rd floor, and there was no balcony. How could anyone be watching me? "Who are you? What do you want?" I asked, trying to sound brave. The voice chuckled. "You'll find out soon enough." Then the line went dead. I stared at my phone, feeling a surge of fear and anger. Who was this creep? How did he get my number? Was this some kind of prank? I decided to call the police. I didn't want to take any chances. I dialed 911 and waited for someone to pick up. 911, what's your emergency? A woman said. Hi, I just received a threatening phone call from an unknown number. He said he was watching me, and he sounded creepy. Can you trace the call and send someone over? I said. Okay, calm down. What's your name and address? The woman asked. I told her my name and address, and she said she would send a patrol car as soon as possible. She also asked me to stay on the line with her until they arrive. Thank you, I appreciate it, I said. No problem, we're here to help. Do you have any idea who this person might be? She asked. No, I don't recognize the voice. And I don't recognize the voice, and I don't have any enemies or stalkers that I know of, I said. Maybe it's someone you met online or someone who got your number from a friend, she suggested. I don't think so. I don't use dating apps, and I'm careful about who I give my number to. Besides, why would they do this? What's the point? I said. Some people are just sick. They get a thrill out of scaring others. Don't worry, "We'll catch him and make him pay," she said. I hoped she was right. I felt a little better talking to her, but I was still nervous. I checked the locks on my doors and windows and made sure my dog was close to me. He was a big German shepherd, and he would protect me if anything happened. I glanced at the clock. It was almost midnight. How long would it take for the police to get here? I wished they would hurry up. Then my phone rang again. It was the same unknown number. I hesitated, but the woman on the line told me to answer it. Maybe they could trace it this time. "Hello," I said. "Hello, beautiful," the voice said. I felt a wave of nausea. He was still watching me. "Where are you? How can you see me?" I asked. "I'm closer than you think. I can see everything you do. I can see you talking to the police. I can see you holding your dog. I can see you shaking with fear," he said. I looked around, but I still didn't see anyone. "How was this possible? Stop this, you sick bastard. The police are on their way. They'll find you and arrest you," I said. He laughed. "The police can't help you. They're too late. I'm already inside your apartment." I felt a jolt of terror. Inside my apartment. How? When? I heard a noise behind me. I turned around and saw him. He was standing in the doorway of my bedroom. He was wearing a black hoodie and a mask. He had a knife in his hand. He smiled and said, "Hello, beautiful." I screamed and dropped my phone. My dog barked and lunged at him. He stabbed my dog in the chest, and he fell to the floor. I ran to the kitchen, looking for a weapon. He followed me, laughing. I grabbed a knife from the drawer and faced him. He was bigger and stronger than me, but I was not going to give up. I stabbed him in the arm and he cried out. He slashed at me and I dodged. We fought for what seemed like an eternity, but it was probably only a few minutes. Then I heard sirens outside. The police had arrived. He heard them too, and he panicked. He ran to the window and jumped out. He landed on the ground, and I heard a thud. I looked out and saw him lying on the pavement, bleeding. The police surrounded him and handcuffed him. He was still alive, but barely. I collapsed on the floor, sobbing. I was alive, but I was traumatized. I had just survived a nightmare. I had just killed a man. The police came in and checked on me. They asked me questions, but I couldn't answer. I was in shock. They took me to the hospital, and they took him to the morgue. I later found out that he was a serial killer who'd been stalking me for months. He had hacked into my security system, and he had a key to my apartment. He had been watching me every night, waiting for the right moment to strike. He had killed several other women before me, and he had planned to kill me too. But he didn't. I fought back, and I won. I was lucky, but I was also brave. I was a survivor. I always hated being alone at night. I felt vulnerable and exposed, and I feared the unknown. I was a college student, and I lived in a dorm. I had a roommate who was my best friend. She was always there for me, and I was always there for her. But that changed one night when she went missing. It was a Saturday night, and she had a date with a guy she met online. She was excited and nervous, and I was happy for her. She asked me to help her get ready, and I did. I helped her pick out a dress and do her makeup. She looked beautiful, and I told her so. She thanked me and hugged me, and then she left. She said she would be back by midnight, and that she would text me when she got there. I said okay, and that I would wait for her. I watched her walk out of the door, and then I closed it. I decided to stay in and study for a test. I had a lot of material to cover, and I needed to focus. I opened my laptop and started to read the notes. I tried to ignore the noise and the light from the hallway. I wished I had a lock on the door, but I didn't. I worked on my laptop for a couple of hours, and then I checked my phone. I saw that it was 11 p.m. I wondered how her date was going, and if she was having fun. I checked my messages and saw that I had none. She hadn't texted me at all. I was worried and curious. Why hadn't she texted me? I decided to text her and ask how she was doing. I typed, "Hey, how's it going? Are you okay?" I waited for a reply, but I didn't get one. It was silent, except for the sound of my own typing. I felt a twinge of anxiety. I wondered if she was busy or maybe rude. I decided to call her and hear her voice. I dialed her number and waited for her to answer, but I didn't hear anything. It was silent, except for the sound of my own ringing. I felt a surge of worry. I wondered if she was ignoring me or maybe in trouble. I decided to check her social media and see if she had posted anything. I opened her Instagram and Facebook and scrolled through her feed, but I didn't see anything. It was blank, except for the posts from earlier that day. I felt a wave of fear. I wondered if she was offline or maybe gone. I decided to check the news and see if there was anything unusual. I opened the browser and searched for the latest headlines, but I didn't find anything. It was normal, except for the stories about the weather and the sports. I felt a flood of panic. I wondered if she was safe or maybe dead. I decided to check the door and see if she had come back. I walked to the door and opened it, hoping to see her smiling face. But I didn't see anything. It was dark and empty, except for the shadows and the sounds. I felt a shock of horror. I wondered if she was lost or maybe taken. I decided to scream and see if anyone would help me. I opened my mouth and let out a loud scream, but I didn't hear anything. It was silent, except for the sound of his voice. He said, "Hello, beautiful. I've been waiting for you."